Okay, so today, as promised, we're going to start with some examples for your assignment 102 that kind of walk through things. A couple of the major things that I'm going to point out is how people did it and what the certain conditions are that make it believable or not so believable. So I have some examples of both. Of course, some of these border on a little creepy, but that's okay. These are examples of how you're combining images to make something surreal, something that's not normally possible. And it's a showcase of what Photoshop can do in terms of bending the laws of reality a little bit. So in this particular example, it works pretty well. Thematically, it works pretty well because obviously it's a Jekyll and Hyde sort of image. The key is that the lighting conditions in both images are very, very similar. And so both are shot with a front flash, black background, pretty easy to combine that way. The Photoshop work occurs right in here. Good news is that he's using part of the hair to cross over the image, which starts to blend the two sides together. So we don't see a strong seam right here, where if part of the hair was cut off or something, we might see that seam. Likewise, if I were picking on any area, this right there is probably a little bit of a mirrored, it's not quite seamless, but for the most part this works very, very well in terms of how they're combining. And it's really a matter of taking two pictures that are similar and putting them together. The tree foot here, where you're combining two images of very different scale to try to get those to combine together. The tree here is working in and around the toes, though if you look carefully, there's some issues in terms of how these combine. You can kind of see the cutout lines in that section. The other thing that's a major factor in this is the lighting conditions. We have a strong light coming from this side, which gives us a strong shadow on that side. When we look at the toes, right, the light's coming from this side, so we get the shadow on the opposite side, which breaks the reality of it. Okay, so you want to pay a lot of attention to lighting conditions. This is a particularly easy one to do. People tend to like this. It's the reflection in a mirror. The reason it's easy is it's a very simple mask, right? It's just a square. You mask off one image for the other, right? Obviously, you need somebody to stand here to reflect the old image, right? And so this one is thematically about aging, but you can do a lot of the same sorts of things with how those work together. Some of these are just kind of creepy, but I think they're entertaining. But this is certainly a combination of different pieces that are coming together to make this kind of creature-ish thing. Again, lighting conditions, if we look at the nose itself, the flash, the light is all identical to the hand. So they're all shot in the same room at the same time of day. A little creepy, right? Similarly bizarre, but still doable. Again, lighting conditions consistent throughout. I think one of the things that this does break down is there's no background. And I think when you shoot it on white, it immediately starts to feel far more fake, so to speak. The other thing that's distinctly fake is the shadow, because there is no shadow of the hand or the plant or anything like that. You can fake a shadow and do a lot better job than that particular image. I really like this, even though it has no background, because it's very subtle in terms of how it came together, particularly with when you're combining two objects, especially an inanimate object and an animate object. You want to pay a lot of attention to little things that can cross over. So for example, on your toes, there's the little wrinkle patches, right, of skin. Those correspond really nicely to the wrinkle patches of the shoes. And he did a really good job of using the wrinkles in the shoes as part of the consistent pattern to where the toes come in as well, right? This obviously had a color shift that was done to it, so we shifted the skin tones to match the leather of the shoes, which is part of how they combine so nicely together. This one is a little bit different in terms of combination, but it has a background, which I think is nice. But again, lighting conditions, right? Strong light from the left, putting the shadows on the right. Same thing happens with the plant, right? So we match those lighting conditions, right? I've seen people try to do this image and recreate this sort of leaf. It's very, very specific to the leaf and getting the right leaf in the right lighting conditions. So you have to be really careful with what image you select to do, okay? The little puzzle piece using focal point to do this, not particularly hard to do with masking, but very compositionally done. This was one that I did a long time ago when I was in undergrad, and I actually won an art competition with it. It had to do with a bunch of different layers of how things were combined in the knife cutting the tree, and so you're trying to thematically go through a bunch of images. Sometimes you have to see something that could fit. So this is a little bit like looking at a cloud and trying to decide what's in the cloud, right? Same kind of thing. You see the carrots in the store and you imagine what if there was a bunch of eyeballs looking at you instead of the ends of the carrots, right? So you collage in the little eyeball and that sort of thing. The other thing that works nicely in images like this is instead of doing an eyeball on every single one of them, you pick one and do it so that there's one thing that's out of place rather than overwhelmingly out of place. And that can be a good strategy as well. Other example. Right? I love this one. I think it's just fantastic. Obviously, a little bit challenging to do, but again, pay a lot of attention to lighting conditions, where the shadows are. That's part of what makes it realistic and actually, quote, work. Right? Combination of the eye and the dirt and the skin, same kind of thing. This one, I think, was pretty well done in terms of how the light of the two combine, which is one of the challenges if two objects are of a different scale. This one's pretty fun, too. This is really a matter of masking, all right? You take one picture. A lot of times it's helpful if you set up a tripod or you have a friend who's going to take these pictures, because if you take the two pictures from the identical place, it makes it really easy, right? You take one picture of the feet with the pants on, right? You take one picture of the pants, the inside of the pants, so to speak. You have to be very careful in how you step out, and then you combine the two together with a mask. Right? Another example of the little girl sitting on the leaf. These ones are really hard to do because you have to get the perspective right, and they have to sit correctly. So in this case, the way the leaf is pretty close to how she's sitting, and they did a pretty good job of integrating the two together. I don't think the shadows are particularly well done. You can tell based on the darkness here that it's really cut out and it's placed on top rather than integrating. I think if you were to make this better, you would want to fake the shadows a little bit more to try to integrate the two a little bit stronger. Right? Again, seeing something, right? In this particular example, it was seeing the dog's mouth in the rock, and then how do you combine the two together. And I think this one was very, very, very well done in terms of how it comes together. This one was pretty good. So sometimes it's about coming up with what the idea is and how do you combine them together. The fact that there's very limited color in this does help the whole piece stand out, right? This one was another one that was done by Arash several years ago, well, probably 5 years ago now. Everything in it is fake except for him. So it was a combination of a lot of pieces that came together to make an image like that. This one's a little bizarre, but it still is a combination of images. This one's kind of creepy in a very subtle way. I think the background's too strong for it to work, but it's kind of a subtle creepiness to it. Yeah, it's two little fetuses inside the apple. So kind of creepy, right? This one I think is extraordinarily well done. Also, again, very much on the creepy side in terms of how certain things come together. Kind of Grimm-esque in a weird way, if you watch that TV show. This is another example that was done by a student. And at first glance, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is dumb, right? But on the same token, this is probably one of the best well-done sets of combination because of how carefully he considered the lighting conditions on these two images. And so, yes, they're very kind of, I just took a random shot sort of these pigs, but part of what works so well is the flash, the frontal flash, the reflection of the eyes, that whole thing is thematically the same from the dog to the pig. It's almost the exact same shot, yet they were combined. And so because of that careful consideration of lighting conditions, something like this works as you pick it up, you look at it, oh, it's totally believable, and then all of a sudden then you realize what's wrong with it, right? Because the lighting conditions are so spot on. This one was a little bit more on the artistic side, kind of bizarre. He played with a lot of Photoshop filters in this, but it still works pretty well, especially with the combination of the wrinkled paper in the skin. I think he did a really nice job with that. Very subtle. It's the backside of the flower becoming the skirt. So, again, very subtle. Lighting conditions, very close, right, to get those things to blend and work nicely together. Right? The combination of the hand drawing, the tattoo, the color in this image work really nicely together. Right? You guys saw this one because I included it on the handout. I think this was extraordinarily well done. I thought it was very creative. One of the biggest challenges with something like this, yes, you're shooting it against the wall, so it's very consistent. You set up a tripod, you set the images. However, right, the combination of the two is rather challenging to get the exact correct height for these two to combine together. So it probably took 100 images to get the right ones to combine. So you're going to have to take a lot of images to do this. This is another one that Pikem did a while back that I thought was very, very well done. Obviously, you recognize the location for which this was taken, but a couple of the key things that make it more believable than anything else. She did shoot this sitting on a stool. She was able to Photoshop out the stool, but part of what works so well is the fact that the shadow matches perfectly, the lighting conditions match perfectly, and the shadow for the stool was removed the same way that the stool itself was removed. So it's the combination of those two, removing both the shadow and the object, that make it really believable. Right? There's not much in this image that isn't believable. Right? This one is also fun. It's the, hey, I woke up in the morning with no legs photo. Same thing. Tripod. Right? You shoot the clothes on the bed. You shoot yourself on the bed. And you combine the two that way. This is the critical area for where you transition from body shape to being just pants, and I think it was very, very well done. He may have stuffed like a pillow in to get just the right amount of billow as they come together, if that makes sense. And I'll end with this one. This one's actually extraordinarily simple to do, right? The face is directly behind the hand, right? And it's just a matter of letting the photo with the face shine through the hand, right? It's a little bit of creative masking, and it comes right through. Okay? So there's a variety of examples. You're more than welcome to look on the website and see things that people have done before. I don't mind if you borrow ideas. Obviously, don't copy it exactly. Make it your own. Change it a little bit. And that's the direction you're going to be going in the next week or so, trying to create this image. Okay? Let me go ahead and stop this. So you all have your exercise 109 handouts for today. Hold on, I'm going to make sure I have mine pulled up here. And what we're going to be doing is building a bunch of cutout people and or landscape objects like trees. I'd let you slide with doing a tree instead of a person if you get bored with people. The purpose of which is if there are a bunch of people that you've already cut out, it makes it really easy down the road when you're doing some kind of an architectural collage. You're in 220, you're in 221, you need some people, you just go download them and plop them in your drawings. They make them look far more realistic because suddenly you have people in them. It's one of the great strategies of making your architectural designs believable is to put people in them. So we need to learn how to cut people out. At the same time, it makes a great opportunity to explain masking and kind of delve more deeper into how masks work in Photoshop. There are a variety of ways of cutting out objects and people in Photoshop. I used to spend more time covering all of the variety, and I think I've distilled it down into, I'm going to show you the best way today to do it, and I think you'll get more out of it rather than trying the variety of ways that are there. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to find some images of people that we're going to cut out. I asked you to try to take some pictures of people when you went on your Exercise 104 expedition. If you want to use those images, all the better. If you don't have those with you or don't want to use them, you can do a search for images. The key in this, especially because they're images of people, is that you want to find images that are licensed for you to use. And so I went to the Creative Commons search, Let me back up here for a second. And I'm searching Flickr because there's usually pretty high resolution images. And I used to always do it, used to be really easy. I would type people walking and you'd get great images of people. Unfortunately now, due to The Walking Dead, if you do that, you get a bunch of images like this, which are not exactly what we were after for our architectural images. So you need to be a little bit aware. What we're looking for, though, is we're looking for people that are completely within an image. So something like this, it's not bad, except see how his feet are cut off? Right? That's not of a lot of use to us in an architectural drawing because he only can be right present in the foreground of a drawing. We want to be able to shrink them down and make them smaller. So we're looking for an image that actually has, right, a whole person in the image. And so we can scroll through, again, too many Walking Dead images, right? So you can keep scrolling through and hopefully you can find them. An image like this might work because you have a complete person there, right? Something like this would work very nicely, right? Because you have the whole person. In this particular instance, it's only a black and white. It would be better if we had a color image, but this one's not bad, okay? I've gone through and I've tried to pull out several other images, right? I have this one of a person running. I like this because of the hair, and I want to show you something to do with that hair and how you would cut that out. So we're going to do that one. When I find an image that I like, on Flickr there's a little arrow with a straight line here in the bottom corner. That will let you download the image. We want to pick the original size or the largest size that's available. And when I click that, it's going to go ahead and start downloading. And let me go ahead and show in folder. And there it is. I want to make sure that I copy it onto my flash drive, which I need to plug in. So bear with me for just a second. Right? You can try people running, you can try people strolling, right? Unfortunately, if you stay away from the word walking, you're going to end up with a little bit better image results. So once I have this, let me copy this, and let me go ahead and put it on my flash drive. This is exercise 109. All right, there's that one. And so I have a couple of other ones, right? I have this one. It's not bad. Right, we could download that one as well. Right, that one's not bad either. Right, again, not bad, but black and white. Right, here's two, not bad either. Okay, and so we could go through and select several of the other ones, right? Let me just see here. Right, it looks like some of these are copywritten, so I might not be able to use them. But anyway, you get the idea. You're going to go through and select some images. So I'm going to go ahead and open that first image. And we'll start working with that first image. Okay, so I have this. She's who I'm going to cut out. And again, I picked her because of the hair, because I want to emphasize how you would go about cutting out the hair, because that's the most challenging thing to cut out. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to crop down the image so that I don't have all the excess stuff around it, because I really don't care about the excess stuff. All I care about is the person. And so I'm going to use what's called the crop tool, which is over here on the left side. It looks like two intersecting lines with a diagonal line through it. And when I do that, you see that I get this dotted line with a few little grips around the edges. And all I'm going to do is drag that over so that I have just my person selected. Something like that. Okay? When I'm done, I'll go ahead and click the little checkbox to finish it, and I end up with just this image. Okay? Again, part of the reason we're looking for a relatively high resolution to begin with of image is because we want to be able to crop down to have just that person showing. Okay? So when I look at this particular person, right, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit, right, I'm going to want to be able to cut her out and select her. And so what I'll do is I'll work on selecting the background. Usually selecting the background is easier than selecting the foreground. And I'm going to use, all right, I have a variety of choices. I have something called the Magic Wand tool that I can use, or I have something called the Quick Selection tool. And for me, the Quick Selection tool is usually the fastest way of making this selection. So I click and hold, and I select Quick Selection tool. And all I'm going to do, if you notice, I get kind of a little brush, a little circle with a plus sign in it. That basically means I'm going to make a selection. And when I drag this, right, you see that it kind of tries to select parts of the image. It's looking for hard edges, right? And so I made a mistake and I selected too much of her leg. I can hold down the Alt key and the little cursor changes from a plus, there it is as a plus, to a minus when I hold down the Alt key. And then I can select out her leg, right, something like that. Okay. Then I can go back to the plus, so I let go, and I can continue selecting. Right. Go up a little bit more, like that. Right. And I'm working my way around the runner here. Now, right in there, I have a little bit that I didn't select, but my brush is a little bit too big in diameter, so I'll use the bracket key to shrink down the size of the brush a bit, and then I can add that part of the selection. Oops, I did a little too much. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger. I'll hold down Alt, and we'll subtract that part out of the selection. So it takes a little bit of practice in terms of how this works. Right, but for the most part, I can create a pretty good selection. Let's subtract out a little bit more right there. All right, so we'll get up here. We need to do a little bit more. All right, so I'll select around. All right, then we get to the hair. Again, I hold down space to pan, and we're going to kind of globally select around the hair. It's not perfect. All right, something like that. And we'll keep coming down this side. That. Oops, too much. Hold down Alt. I want to subtract out the arm. Right. I'd like that little region right in there. So let me go ahead and add that. A little bit too much. Let's subtract off a little bit. Like that. Okay, not bad. All right, we'll subtract off a little bit there because I selected a little too much clothing. And then we'll take a little bit more off this side. Make this a little bit bigger. And we'll come down here and finish off the legs and the shoes. Oh, I lost her shoe. Take her shoe back out. Alright, we need to do a little bit more right here. Right, and then we'll subtract out right there, and a little bit more right there. I'm holding down the Alt. So when I do Alt, I subtract from. When I don't hold anything, I add to. I need this last shoe. Oops. Let me hold down Alt. We'll subtract that part out as well. Add back a little bit more. Okay. So we got it pretty well. If I press Control-0, we can see that I have this selection. Okay? The hair is the most challenging part. The rest of it is not bad. Right? And so, for example, for right now, if I press the Delete key, right, and I said OK, right, I have no idea what it just gave me, but the point is I can cut her out. Let me do a layer from background here. So I unlock my layer, and let me see if I can delete. There we go. So I've cut her out. She's reasonably cut out. But instead of doing a delete key, and before I do that, I want to concentrate on this hair section for a second. So let me zoom in, and we'll come back up here to the hair. And I want to work on this. Now, if we look carefully at hair, hair is one of the most difficult things to cut out. Tree leaves are kind of up there with the hair in terms of how difficult they are. The problem is, when we're looking at this region, bits of color of the background are shining through the hair. Right? But the hair is a very fine set of objects, such that we can't isolate each individual hair, but we end up with kind of a blurred color that's coming through. But the hair itself, the color of the hair, is altering the color of the background a little bit. So we need to be careful with how we select this and isolate it. And going through with my little selection and trying to select all of these regions really doesn't work well. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use something called Refine Edge. Okay? And luckily, because of this selection, we have a button for Refine Edge that's here. It's also available under the Select menu. We can go to Refine Edge there as well. When I click on Refine Edge, it's going to bring up the Refine Edge dialog box that's showing over here. And if we look at the topmost section of this Refine Edge tool, we see that I have something called View Mode, and then I can pick a bunch of preset views. Okay? And so I can do the marching ants, which shows my selection. I can do the overlay, which I tend to think works the best, which makes my selection in kind of this pinkish color. Right? I can go to on black, which will show my my cutout on black. Makes it kind of obvious when you miss something like this ear. Okay? I can do on white, so the cutout is white. I can do black and white. Right? I can do on layers, I can do reveal layers as well. Those two not so useful. To me, the most useful is generally the overlay mode, but you can play around with these and you'll flip back and forth as you work through this. Okay? The next thing is we have something called edge detection. For what I'm doing in isolating the hair, I'm not going to change the pixels here of edge detection. I am, however, under Adjust Edge, going to change two values. The first one is the smooth, and I'm going to change that to 3. And I'm going to change the feather to 0.3. Okay? These are two arbitrary values. I've found that they work pretty well for isolating hair in a scene like this. You can adjust these values a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on if you're getting the results you want. Okay? I'm not going to change any of the other adjustments for right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint, right, using my little paintbrush here, over the region that has the hair. And so I'll just paint over, like this part here. And when I let go, see how it's starting to show the hair, rather than a big red blob, it's starting to show the individual pieces of the hair. Right? So we'll keep doing this and we'll paint over the hair. Right? And we'll start to see the background shining through a bit. Right? So I'll paint over this, that, and we'll start to see more and more of the hair shining through. And I want to be kind of careful, and I want to go through this rather meticulously, right, and start to see what's happening. Right? Let's do up there just a little bit. We've got a little bit of wisps coming off there. All right, sounds pretty good. Right, a little bit more in there. Let's check right there. See if we can't refine her ear a little bit. Okay, so now I'm going to switch from my overlay mode to my black mode, and you can see that the hair now is very much selected. Rather than that big blocky region, it's isolated very, very nicely, and I'm seeing the background through it. It doesn't look like I have the ear perfectly yet, and so I can do a combination of continuing to refine this edge, right? Or I can hold down the Alt key to try to subtract from the edge and see if it can do a better job of finding that edge. Didn't do that great of a job. This may be something that I have to adjust in the mask afterward, because I'm missing that piece of the ear. So I'm going to continue looking down here and see if there's any other regions that I really should work on refining the edge. Right? Maybe right in there I should refine the edge a little bit. Maybe right in there against the clothes I'll refine the edge. Right, we'll come down here. It's not too bad. Right, we could refine right there a little bit. Maybe refine right there a little bit. Okay, so see there, I ended up with kind of a transparent patch. You guys even see that? Not really. Let me switch to overlay mode, and you can see. Maybe it's. Can you see that it's a little lighter right there? That's going to make this part of the leg semi-transparent, which is really not what I want. So let me try to hold down Alt and see if I can subtract that from my selection again. Yeah, much better. All right, we got a little bit of an issue right there. We'll refine that up. And then I'll come down here to the shoelaces. Right, I want to include the shoelaces. So let's choose to refine the shoelace edge. There we go. Choose to refine that shoelace edge a little bit along the ground there. So take that shoelace, right? And if I switch this over into my black, I'm getting a little bit of the shoelace there, not all of it. I lost a little bit of the shoe there, so we'll see if we can't sharpen that up a little bit. Okay, so I have this done. And when I'm done and I click OK, you'll expect some magical thing to happen. But really all it's going to do is send me back to where I had some marching ants. Okay, so it's nothing particularly fancy. Really nothing fancy right now. But I end up with the selection. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to work on my layer and I'm going to add a layer mask. And so you guys remember back to the high dynamic range processing when we were separating off parts of the image. We're going to do the same thing here, only this time we're going to manually do it. And I'm going to click on this little button. It looks like a rectangle with a circle cut out of the center of it. And I'm going to click on that, and when I do it, it's going to do the opposite of what I wanted it to do. I have to invert the selection. So let me go up to select, inverse, so that just the person is selected. Right? Then I'll click on my little layer mask here. And when I do that, the background of the image goes away. Right? And I end up with my hair quite nicely cut out. And if we scroll down here, right, we can see my shoe and a little bit of my shoelace, etc. And if we look at my layer, right, over here, we see that I have the person and then I have a mask. The black area represents what's been cut out. The white area represents what's still solid. Okay? The good news about this is when I have a region like her ear that got cut off, right, I can bring that back. I haven't done any permanent deletions to this. And I can do that by using the paintbrush tool, which is right here, right? And I can paint in either black or white, depending on whether I want to bring something back or get rid of it. So I'm going to paint in white because I want to bring her ear back. I do not want to paint with a bird brush. So we're going to switch from the bird brush back to a normal brush. So let me come back up here. And I'm going to change the hardness of my brush to be 100% so I have a nice sharp edge to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint back in white where her ear would be. Right? And I don't know exactly where her ear is. There it is. Let's zoom in on her a little bit. Right? Then I'm going to flip my colors back to black and I'm going to paint out, right, the part that I don't need here. Let me go ahead and make my brush a little bit smaller. Again, I'm using the bracket key to do that. And we'll slice right along there. And then we'll slice right along here. Go in right there, and we'll slice right along there. So I'm making a couple adjustments, right? And before I move on too much, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just adjusting, making sure that there's no other little pieces that should be back or in front. So I'll look at this very carefully. Oops, sorry about that. Right? So here, against her arm, right, I probably should have done a little bit better refining of the edge. But I have black selected. I'm on the mask layer, and I can just come in and make that part go away. Right? I can also smooth this out a little bit. Right? So maybe her elbow is going to get a little bit smaller. Right? But we'll smooth that out like that. I really should come up here a little bit more. Right? Let me make my brush a little bit smaller. Right? Something like that. And we can go a little bit smaller still. And isolate it a little bit more, right? Then we can come down here and we can continue kind of following along. I can make my brush a little bit bigger, and all I'm basically doing right now is a little bit of touch-up work to make sure that this image looks good. Right? I took a little bit too much off there. And we'll continue along. Yeah, there's a little problem spot. Right? Let's make that brush a little bit smaller. Touch it up. Okay, have a little bit of shoe problems down here. We'll make the brush a little bit bigger, right? Oops, wrong way. Let me paint with white instead of black, right? And we can make her shoe come back, or at least this part of her shoe come back. It looks like I took a little bit too much of her shoe there, so we'll flip the colors again, right? And we'll take off that part of her shoe. Again, make that a little bit smaller, right? And so I'm just going through and I'm making a few fine adjustments. Once I'm done, right, I have a very nice cutout of this person, and I'll be able to use this down the road. Okay? So I want to do a couple more things. First thing that I'll do is I'm going to save it as a PNG. And the reason that I'm going to pick a PNG rather than a JPEG is because a PNG file will preserve the background as being transparent. So if I save it as a JPEG, it'll make the background white, which makes it not really usable down the road. I want the background to be transparent. So I'm going to go up to the File menu. I'm going to go to Save for Web. And you see when I say JPEG, the background, see how it's a white background right now? If I switch to PNG 24, I'm going to see the checkerboard pattern on the background, which means it's transparent, right? I'll go ahead and click Save at that point. And I'd really like to name this as something that's clear. So I'll say, you know, girl running, or something like that. And I'm also going to append color to it, so I know this is the color version of it. So I'll go ahead and click Save. And now that's done. Now, to save myself a little bit of work down the road, sometimes you want a color version, sometimes you want a black and white version. I'm going to go ahead and do the black and white right now. So I'll go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Channel Mixer. And I'm going to check the box for monochrome. And then I'll look through again my presets and see, is there any one that makes her look better than the others. Right, so we'll do a quick run through. That one's pretty good. Right, pretty good black and white image. I'll go ahead and go to File, Save for Web, and once again it's going to be a PNG 24. I'll click on Save, and it'll be still girl running, only this time it's not going to be color, it's going to be BW for black and white, and I'll go ahead and click Save. Perfect. And then I'll go, and sometimes you want just the silhouette of the person. Okay, and so this is another way of testing what your masking skill is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new layer. So I'll just click on New Layer. I can also go up to Layer, New Layer. It's fine. There's a New Layer dialog box, or New Layer button right down here. Okay, and if we look at my layers, I have Layer 1 is my brand new layer. We'll turn off the other two layers for a second. And I'm going to paint this in a 75% gray, so kind of a dark gray color. And I can do that with the paintbrush tool. I can do it with the paint bucket tool, which is also here. It doesn't matter. I'm going to specify that I want it to be 75% gray. So I come over here to where it's black right now, and I'm going to go through the CMYK values and go 0, 0, 0. C, M, and Y are cyan, magenta, and yellow ink when you're printing, right? K is black ink. So it's really easy to get a 75% gray by changing the K value to be 75% and leaving CMY 0. Right? So there is my 75 gray. I'll say OK. Then I can use my paintbrush. That's fine. Let's make my brush a little bit bigger here. It is. And we'll go ahead and just paint this gray. Right? And I'm going to paint the whole thing gray. It makes life easy. Okay? Then I already have the mask that I've cut out conveniently for this girl. I want to copy the mask from this layer to the layer 1. So I'll hold down the Alt key to do this, and I'll drag the mask from one layer to the other layer, and it will create a copy of the mask that I already created, which will then give me a gray cutout. Right? It's also showing me that I made a few mistakes. Right? I should have made those come back in. So since we're here, we can go back on my layer mask and fix that problem. Oops. Wrong way. All right. So I end up with this nice gray figure, and I'll go ahead and save this as well. So I'll go File, Save for Web, click Save, and this is going to be gray. And I'll go ahead and click Save. Okay? So I now have this person isolated as a color image, a black and white image, and just a neutral gray kind of silhouette. Because sometimes when you're doing your architectural representations, you just want silhouettes. You don't want that much detail. Okay? So I have that nicely done. Now it's a matter of posting. And so I'll come here back to the course website. And I meant to log in first, so bear with me for just a second while we do this. Okay, so if you go to Resources, right, if we scroll down, you'll see Collage Images. Okay, and so this is a resource for you to use. Everything that you create today will be available for other students to use. Likewise, everything they've done is available for you to use. right? And so you can see that people have isolated, landscape objects. There's trees, but there's also a lot of people. There's mostly people because I think they're the most valuable for people to use. If you click on the More People button, you can see kind of an endless list of here's male and female, right, etc. So you want to get your people into this same archive of people. So when we go ahead and create a new post, all right, I'm going to say this is girl running, right, and I'm going to upload my media. So I'm going to click on Add Media, and we'll upload the files. I want to upload all 3 of my images. So we'll go here, and I can hold down Shift and select all 3, the black and white, the color, and the gray. I'll go ahead and click Open, and we'll wait for just a second while it uploads those. Okay, so I have all 3 of those ready. What I'm going to do is click on the Insert into Post button. And when I do that, my post will then have the 3 images in it. There they are, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, I'm going to come all the way down to set my featured image. So we'll set my featured image. I'm going to pick the color image as the featured image. We'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that I've done that and I've gotten it ready, I'm not overly worried about my name being in here because when I go to grade you, I'll be able to tell that you posted it. So you really don't have to put your name on this exercise. You can just put what it is. But one of the critical things is still categorizing it as your exercise 109. So we'll make sure we check that box. And then as I scroll down here, right, you'll see almost at the bottom a box for collage images. Okay? And so in here, we've got a bunch of check boxes for you to be able to categorize this particular image. And this is going to help people find it down the road. Right? So if I look at this, we can check the box for running. I hope. There's running. We'll check the box for running. Let me scroll down here a little bit. Right? This is people. It's a female, girl, lady. Sure, both of those. Oh. Categorize. It's a woman. Right? Okay. So I've got all of those checked. If I don't like one of them, there is an ability to add another tag. So I can click on the Add New Tag and I can say what it is. Try to make it fall under one of the parent categories if you can. But you can add your own tag if you don't feel like it accurately represents what you're trying to do. So once I have those tags done, right, I have my people inserted, I have my featured image. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Publish link, and that will then publish this into the archive of people that have been cut out. Okay? So your task today is to do this for 5 people, right? If you get tired of people, you can do trees or something else, right? Again, this is very much about repetitive practicing what you have. Okay? You have 2 hours to do this. If you don't make it to all 5, it's not the end of the world, but I want you to do as many as possible. Okay? It is a little bit challenging to get used to, but once you start getting in the flow of it, it's not that bad. Okay? So spend time, find good images to cut out, and go from there. Are there any questions? No? Okay.